Hey, welcome back to Alum House Sound. My name is Dave, and today we're going to continue our series or session, if you will. This is going to be part 2 of refining this scene. So we had a subscriber just like you that had reached out to me on my website, asked for some help. I've done some work with them on their scene over Zoom, and then they were able to get some multi-tracks recorded and get those over to me. Last video we went through and we got X32 Edit. We used that software to kind of clean up the scene a little bit before we put it on the console. We got the tracks loaded into the DAW, and we got the DAW primed and ready so that now the DAW is in a virtual sound check environment. So the DAW is sending tracks into the console, and what we're going to do is just dive into the console now. This is going to be a little bit longer video, so buckle up. I'll put some quick links in the bottom based on what I'm going to do, but we're going to build a mix right now. We've removed all EQ, compression, effects, everything. We're just going to start putting some faders up and see what we can get out of a basic mix. We'll send some stuff into some reverb and see how that helps us out. And then after that, we'll start to dial in EQ and compression for each input. Finally, the goal with this video is to get this console making a broadcast mix that is pretty refined. And so buckle up, let's jump onto the console. Here we go. All right, well, let's go ahead and dive into this. We've got X32 Edit set up here on the console. I've got my headphones on to the actual X32 as well, and we're just going to dive in and start exploring what we've got going on with this mix. So I'm going to start my DAW, which is going to send some inputs into the console. You can see those start blinking here, and we're just going to go ahead and start messing with everything and hearing what we can get. Now, in the last video, we did go through and we did all of the DAW setup. We did all of the X32 Edit setup. We got this scene put onto the console. A number of things that we just kind of cleared out in general, whether it's the buses, the mix, because this scene started out as a front of house scene, and then it was copied and inputted onto their streaming console. And so we've kind of picked it up, cleaned things up, and just starting from scratch outside of, say, their naming conventions and order of inputs. So at this point now, we've got their multi-tracks that we loaded into the DAW. That's running into the console. You can see it here in X32 Edit. And this can be the best way for us to record you guys just kind of watching through and listening and hearing what I'm hearing, and I'll talk over it as I do it live. So let's go ahead and jump in. Now, we're going to come to vocals last in this case. One thing that I noticed, they do have tracks. So if I unmute the tracks, we can listen to tracks here. One thing I'll point out as well is these are all these things are going to DCAs. We talked about this in the previous video as well. Hey, if you haven't seen that video, I'll link it up here in the top right of the screen. You can also go down in the description after this video and watch that one if you need help getting to where we are right now. But we've got DCAs on the right. So we've got our vocals going in DCA 1, guitars, drums, and then keys. So tracks is going to be considered part of the keys for them. And one of the things that we've got here that you'll see is just, I've got these turned down to say -5. That's just because of me talking through this microphone in the console as well. When I finish this, I'm going to push these back up to 0 for the DCAs so that we get the full volume coming through the console and it's not masked or diminished. Part of that is going to impact later on when we get to adding some effects on the main out, the compressor and the limiter, and maybe I'll pull those back up to 0 at that point. But for right now, if you notice that, that's why they're down at say -5. Let's go ahead and start to explore these sounds. And I want to build a mix without having any EQ or compression on any of these inputs. We're just going to see what we get. We know that low cut is going to be a great tool, but let's jump in and just see what we can get building a mix with our raw inputs. No effects, no nothing else. So this is our tracks. I'm going to actually start with the live band and then add tracks in later on because I want the tracks to support the band, not the band to support the tracks. So we know that that's here. Let's go ahead and pull that down. Over here, we've got this mic here. It was listed as ambient mic, and then come to find out it's actually an MD mic. So I renamed that MD mic, so we're going to keep that down. And 31, well, that's me. That's the mic I'm talking through. So let's come in here and explore our drums. I'm actually going to unmute. They've got mute 1 there for everything. So let's hear our kick drum. So that's interesting, actually. If you heard at the beginning of that, you could hear some double hits, and that seems just like maybe a lazy kick drum pedal. When I say lazy, I mean you're not kicking and staying into the kick drum head. It's kind of bouncing, and because this is an electric kit, you get kind of those the sympathetic secondary hits picked up. You hear that? So you kind of get a boom chick, or boom click. Cluck, 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 cluck. Okay, so that's interesting. That could play a factor when we get into adding some reverb, but we're going to keep moving. Let's hear snare drum. Okay, what about these hats? Whoa, those hats are loud. One of the things that I have done already is set my gain structure. So if you look at any of these, inputs, we should see this at about -12. That one's apparently a little bit loud, but that's the kick drum, and it is what it is. So we've got the tracks on loop. But anyway, these have all been set to -12 on their inputs across the board for everybody. All right, we'll pull the hats down. Now we've got some crashes, and maybe they'll play. I'm just going to bring these up to 0. Crash left, crash right, and ride. We'll see how much of those we need later on. Toms, I'm going to bring toms up even though I don't hear them played right now, and I'm just going to see. We'll put these around -5. All right, let's add in some bass guitar. All right, so you can hear how inconsistent when the bass player plucks sometimes really hard, some of the lower strings or open strings, natural tendency is to be super loud on those. And then when they're playing with their fingers, it is more controlled. Obviously, most guitarists will play through a compressor on their own, through a pedal, but we've got the luxury of having a compressor on board. We'll get there in a minute. Let's listen back to that basic again. All right, let's add in some keyboard. So we got an opportunity to hear the toms. The toms sound good, but this ride seems a little loud, so I'm going to go back over here. Bring that ride down. Let's keep going on these instruments now. Keyboards, let's see what this electric sounds like. All right, what is this guitar? Sounds like a rhythm guitar. I do have these panned already left and right. All right, we got acoustic here. All right, now let's bring the tracks in. All right, so that's not a bad start for just the band right there. Obviously, we want to control some things. We want to get some compression, some EQ, which is going to clean up some of the just overlappingness. But we're not having to deal with all of the crazy sounds of live drums. And so we, sampled sounds are sampled sounds. But I do want to add some vocals in for just a minute here, and we'll see what we can get balance-wise with the vocals. And we might, when we start doing EQ and compression, just mute the vocal DCA, which will let us listen to just the band before we dive back into vocals. But let's see what we get with vocals here. So we'll listen to this again. And again, this is just on a loop. So it looks like some people start singing at the end, and maybe I can extend that loop a little bit. This Shannon mic here, what I notice is that I don't think there's anybody singing on it. I'm not quite sure, but we'll have to listen in just a second and see. When I crank it up, that's what I hear. So it sounds like just an open mic on stage. That's actually picking up the click from somebody's headphones. That's kind of funny. All right, let's unmute everybody, see what we get here.
And if you are for me, who can be against me? For Jesus, there's nothing impossible for you.
Now, I did hear, unfortunately, this the guy singing lead got sick or had, sinus stuff a day or two before, so he was not happy with the performance. But one of the things I'm listening for is where the beginnings of words are loud and then the rest of the word gets soft. That's where compressor is really going to help us dial this in and even that out. But I think we're at a good place with this mix right now. We could add effects to it, but I want to just start to refine the EQ and compression right now for the band. So I'm going to go ahead and mute this vocal DCA. And then we'll mute guitars and keys. We'll just listen to the drums, and we shouldn't have to do much because they are sampled sounds, but we'll just listen. We might be able to use some compression to get that kick drum a little bit more refined. Let's see what we get. Yeah, that double hit's kind of throwing me off, whether it's the kick or the snare. We're hearing both, but this is what I did with the kick drum. So if we look at, I'm not going to use a gate because we don't really need a gate here, being electric. Compressor, here's my compressor sound on. It's just when he really digs into it, it's compressing it some and it's bringing up the less, it's helping to even out some of the inconsistencies. All right, let's turn on low cut and then the EQ. So one of the things I'm looking at is this low end here. We don't really hear it much. So this is 80 Hertz. You can see how the sample has that really accentuated, and that's great for kick drum. We love dancing to the low end. We have to watch that doesn't kill our compressors or our limiters that we might be using through our live stream. But let's keep going here. Let's hit the snare drum, and we'll start back here. Obviously no gate, then the compressor. EQ, here's the low cut. Again, this is a sampled sound. I mean, you can see by the RTA where the sound is coming through. It is a good snare drum. I added some more top end up here because it helped bring a little bit of the snap, the sizzle out as though it has a bottom mic, kind of artificially doing that. Toms, I just kind of guessed because I didn't hear much, so I've just got some low cut on there and a little bit of compression in case it's needed. So we got a couple toms. We'll just turn these on so that they're on. Hats. What did I do with the hats? Let's see. Compressor. I'm trying to tame that down, and I'm trying to tame down like the super pinginess of it. So this is what I ended up with. So if I turn this EQ off, it just sounds like a heavy 15-inch Zildjian set of cymbals. This gave me a little bit more of this top end, and I preferred it some. Crash cymbals, we don't hear much of it, but I'm just going to turn these on because I had them on when I was messing with this a while ago. Ride cymbal. Wow, he had a cowbell in there. All right, so here we're on the ride. Here's without the EQ. I mean, you can see, because it's a sample, I'm not doing anything. I'm just turning off what's not there in case they go later on to a full kit. All right, so that's our drum sound. I'm going to mute this now, and I want to go and listen to the band. So I guess if I mute the drums here, we can start listening to the keyboards. All right, tracks. Tracks in theory are sampled sounds, and we wouldn't need to do anything with them. I've got some low cut, and I did take out a little bit in this range here, the 275 hertz range. It seemed like when I listened to it, it was just kind of muddying up some of the mix. We don't need a compressor on, so that's unneeded. Let's see here. What else do we have? Keyboards. Here's the keyboard sound. So here, if I mute the tracks, keyboard sound. I've got a little compression on there just to help kind of even out, let it sit in the mix anytime he's playing a melodic line. This is my low cut. I'm trying to remove some of the information so that the bass guitar has got space to sit down in this low frequency. And then here's my EQ. It does thin out some because I'm removing these frequencies in the middle 500 hertz range. And I'm adding this articulation here. Just a little bit. So no EQ. And again, this is a fine piano sound if you're doing solo piano. But once we get it in the mix with all the other instruments, we got to create some extra space. So turn this on like that. And again, when we add the tracks back in, we add some drums in. Okay. All right, let's go to some guitars. Let's mute some of these individually here. Where we got? All right, let's start with bass guitar. So bass guitar, we heard a lot of inconsistencies early on. So what I'm going to do is come here and hit some compression first. So you see I've got a makeup gain of 4 dB, and I'm pulling out upwards of 6 dB. I am kind of letting the attack come through, and so I'm compressing everything after the attack. So when he hits, we still get the click or the pluck coming through, click of a pick or the pluck of the finger, whatever you want to call it. And I've pulled the mix down to 90%. That was just to let some of the natural sound come through, not be super heavily compressed, but we are compressing a good bit of it. Let's see what we did on the EQ here. All right, I do have some low cut, just 40 hertz and down. All right, and because we're going to live stream, this is all live stream, so most people are not going to have some 18-inch subs pounding away when they're listening to this. And the EQ, so I'm adding some more of this top end. If we hear this 250 hertz growl, I'm adding just a little bit of it, 2.5 dB. That's going to help for your smaller speakers. Notice though, I'm pulling down some of this low end. All right, that's the super boomy stuff. I'm actually pulling some of that down, just about 2 dB, so that when he goes crazy like that and hits that big note, we can control it. This top note here, you can see this is about 800-900 hertz. This is that attack, the plucking. This is where we hear the guitar in the mix. The bottom end is where we feel it, but the top end up here is where we're going to hear it. Similar to a kick drum, you get the top end attack, that click of the beater into the head. And so we want to make sure that that is even across the board, and we can really utilize that. So I actually think I want to tighten up this kick drum or the bass guitar even more. So I'm going to take the attack and make it a faster attack, so that when he hits that really big, boomy low note, it's not punching through quite as much. I think the combination of the mix and the attack is kind of letting too much of it peek through. Let's go drums now with bass guitar. Maybe could use a little less kick drum, but we'll get to that in a minute. All right, let's go with the next guitar. Let's listen to this one. This is electric guitar here. So I've just got some compression turned on, not know if they're playing through a pedal. But what I did hear when I was listening to more of the tracks, more of this rehearsal track, is that there were different sounds that would jump out, you know, bigger than others or bigger strums, things like that. So I've just got some compression turned on there. And then the EQ here. So you can see we got a pretty clean sound coming through. I'm just going to cut out the low end. And then this is the EQ that I put on there. Just a little bit more of that top end articulation. Get it to speak through the mix. All right. Let's go to this next one here. So again, we've got some compression turned on, pulling out about 3 dB just to control the sound, but bringing it back up 2.5 to help even it out. EQ, I've got some low cut that I turned on, and then some basic EQing just to get some of these sounds out. So this is what I was listening to. That sound there. Kind of nasally sound there. Okay, we'll put that with the other one. And bass. All right, let's keep going here. Now we've got this acoustic guitar. So this is the sound we're getting. Obviously, this is in the right ear. It's already panned to the right. So I added some compression just to get the sound to be more even and consistent. And then this EQ, I'm taking out the low end. And I don't have any EQing on this one. I just kind of let it run. I would, you know, if we're doing like a solo acoustic deal, yeah, we're gonna add some low end into this, down in this kind of 250 to 400 range, to add some body of the guitar back in. But when we put it in the mix with everything else, it's just gonna be helping the hi-hats. You can hear it on the one side, sits pretty well. Probably pull it down some, but kind of bring this guy up some, this lead guitar. All right, then we'll bring the keyboards in. All right, let's listen to vocals now. So we will mute those and get some vocals in here.
There's nothing to fear now.
So let's bring up
this
mic here, this Eli. All right, and let's take a look at Eli's
so when I
dynamics.
I'll fight on my knees with my hands lifted high. Oh God, the battle belongs to you. Every fear I lay at your feet. I sing through the night.
So we can hear the beginnings of his words when he sings, and every fear, when he says every, the beginning, he's coming out with a bunch of air. And we can hear right now while soloing, we can hear that compressor kicking in. But what we've done is we're taking out almost 6 dB on the bigger spots, and we're adding 4 back in. And that's really going to even it up. Again, I'm running 0 millisecond attack. I've got my hold, my attack, and my release turned all the way down. So it's fast on and fast off, which is going to help kind of even this out in the live setting.
You see the beauty.
All right, so if I turn the compressor off, here we go.
And all I see is a cross. God, you see the empty tomb.
And so the end of his words are still heard. Let's go to EQ.
My knees with my hands lifted
Low cut.
high. Oh God, the
EQ.
battle belongs to you. Every fear I lay at your feet. I sing through the night.
Now, knowing that this guy was sick and had some nasal stuff going on, he may not need this much top end pushed up. I mean, I've got that almost 9 dB from 8K and up, trying to get a little bit of air back into his voice. My assumption is they're just using some basic SM58s for microphones. I could be completely wrong about that. Maybe some Sennheiser 835s. Does a pretty good job of controlling the lower end, but usually does not have as much top end air added in from the microphone itself. So just adding some of that in seemed to help it sit in the mix better and stay kind of present even when all these instruments were in and playing full out. All right, let's listen to the next one here. This was a female. All right, she should come in now.
When all I see are the ash, you see the beauty.
All right, so I'll put some compression on here, kind of bring her up.
When all I see is a cross, God, you see the empty tomb.
And this is what I did EQ-wise. Kind of took out some of that mid-range.
So when I fight, I'll fight on my knees with my hands lifted
Yeah, now
high.
she's singing out. So listen to the difference on the compressor.
Battle belongs
Off.
to you. Every fear I lay at your feet.
Compressor's on.
I'll sing through the night. Oh God, the battle.
All right, so let's go down here and listen to this one, Ashley. I know she sings at the chorus.
So when I fight, I'll fight on my knees with my
Alright, add some
hands
compression.
lifted high. Oh God, the battle belongs to you, and every fear I lay at your feet.
All right,
I'll sing
EQ.
through the night. Oh God, the battle belongs to you.
So this is some of the stuff that I was taking out in here. Kind of nasaliness. This is 1000 hertz, 1.2. And then again, adding some air back in at the top. So let's listen to these vocals together when they all sing.
For Jesus, there's nothing impossible for you. When all I see are the ashes, you see the beauty.
Let's add some keyboards in. Tracks.
When all I see is a cross.
Guitars.
God, you see
Drums.
the empty tomb. So when I fight on my knees with my hands lifted high. Oh God, the battle belongs to you. Every fear I lay at your feet.
All right, so I'm pretty comfortable with that right now. I think we've got a pretty good mix started. Now, the next thing I want to do is add some effects. So let's go up and take a look at the effects. that we've got here, and I'm running my my normal vintage Verb. There's plenty of other reverbs in here that can do great things. This is just one that that was already set up, as we talked about before, and I'm comfortable with this one, running it as it is. 1.7 seconds is just enough to add some reverb to the group, but not be too aggressively long. This may be nice if you had this other Hall Verb up here that had more of like a 2.5 to 3 second reverb setup as a secondary reverb that could really add some depth in. But for me right now, just adding some Verb, we've got 1.7 seconds. And let's look at the second side here. This is a pre-delay of 36 milliseconds. So that gives enough time for the initial vocal, let's say, to come through and be heard, and then the reverb kicks in. And if you think about it, that's what you hear in the room usually, is you're going to hear the natural vocal, and then your brain picks up all the affected sound coming off of walls around you. So I'm good with that. We're going to leave that there and start to add some instruments and vocals into the reverb. So I'm going to mute the vocals and we'll start with the Verb. So in this, we can just hit reverb here. All right, I don't need to add tracks in. I'm going to add acoustic guitar in. Electric guitar, this electric guitar. A little bit of bass, keyboard. Let's go to the drums, add some snare drum in. Redo the effects. All right, so now let's add the effects in here. So we're going to start out with, we don't need tracks, but let's go acoustic guitar. Let's actually make sure that this is added into, so here's the bus returns at 0. Effects returns there at 0 as well. All right, good. So we can come back over here. Let's select our reverb bus. Keyboards. Snare drum, please. You hear that snare drum open up? Listen to that. Let's just hear the drums. So no snare drum. That's a little bit of a shotgun sound, but we kind of do need to get some reverb in there for these samples because they're pretty dry. I'm even going to add the kick drum in, but what I'm going to do is mute this real quick. I'm going to add the kick drum in, and we're going to EQ our effects bus send so that we can make sure that we don't have the low end, like 150 hertz and down is going to be cut out, so we don't have that kind of rumble swirling around in the reverb sound. But let's keep going here. Drums. So this is where I got to watch out that the double hits on the snare drum and the kick drum don't clash with the hi-hats. Let's listen. Daka, doom, daka. I will bring the hi-hats down. We will put the cymbals just a little bit in there. All right, so let's listen to that with keyboards. Let's add some vocals in.
Impossible for you. When all I see are the ashes, you see the beauty.
So that's a big difference on the vocals, having that tail.
When all I see is a cross, God, you see the end.
Okay, this is no reverb. Hear how dry that is?
So when I fight, I'll
Add the reverb
fight
back
on
in.
my knees with my hands lifted high. Oh God.
Yeah, put you in a room. That's great. No reverb.
Every fear I lay at your
And then this is with reverb.
I'll sing through the night. Oh God, the battle.
All right, so that's a big difference. Just adding those vocals, some snare drum, and a couple guitars into the reverb really helps it. Now, we do have a delay here as well, this chamber plus delay. And this is kind of, again, my favorite because in a DAW, anytime I mix a track in a DAW for somebody, I am typically going to take whatever reverb I'm using, and I'm going to add that onto the effects channel and chain within my delay bus as well, so that my delay is going through a bus that's going to sound similar to what the rest of the band and everything is going through. So delay plus chamber gives us that ability. Do notice that I'm a bit more on the delay side than the reverb side, and that's done with the balance. So you kind of pan left or right to get more or less delay or verb. And let's see, the pattern is 3/4. Sometimes I go 2/3, but I think on this one I did 3/4. And everything else is pretty much stock settings. Low cut, 132 hertz. That is important, but again, we're going to EQ these as well on the input buses. But let's just add the vocals. This is just for vocals, so let's add some vocals into the delay and see what we get.
So when I fight on my knees with my hands lifted high.
Yeah, that's too much, right?
The battle belongs to you.
We all agree on that. Let's add in just what we need.
Lay at your feet. I'll sing through the night. Oh God, the battle. Your love surrounds me.
So when it's soloed, it's going to be way too much, but let's hear it as a group.
There's nothing to fear now, for I am safe with you. So when I fight on my knees with my hands lifted high.
All right, so I'm going to take all the effects off,
The battle belongs to you.
and this is just the delay on.
Every fear I lay at your feet. I'll sing through the night.
So I think it's too much, so I'm going to back the delay down some.
And if you are for me, who can be against me?
So this is no delay. Let's hear him sing with no delay.
For Jesus, there's nothing
With delay.
impossible for you.
No delay.
When all I see are the ashes,
With delay.
you see the beauty.
So it's just enough tail added. It's like we're right in the middle here.
All I see is the cross. God, you see
Because when they sing louder, we get more delay. Let's add the verb back in as well.
So when I fight on my knees with my hands lifted high. Oh,
All right, so the next, there's the tail. Next thing we can do is come over here into the effects, and let's go back to our main left and right bus. And in the effects now, we could turn these all the way down and just turn up what we need. For me, I'm a huge proponent. I love keeping these at 0, and then only as many things as I can keep at 0, the better. So on this vintage verb, as an example, I adjusted the level to be only what I needed when I had a bunch of things at 0. So when I'm here and I'm sending in, my biggest sounds are going in at unity. That makes it easier to troubleshoot. With the delay plus chamber, we don't have an overall volume control. And so we've got to use something. And so for me, I like to keep the bus. If we look at the bus send here, these sends are at 0. And then my effects returns are, come on, there we go, also at 0. And so what I'm doing is just only adding in what I need in that effect bus. But right now, we've got a pretty good sound. We have to look at the levels now and see if they are broadcast ready. I'm doing air quotes to say broadcast ready. But I think we've got a pretty good sound so far. We've got some EQ, we've got some compression. We need to check our effects buses. The send, yeah, so if we look at this, this is our reverb send, and you can see here that we've got a low cut at 60 hertz. I'm probably going to bump that up and bring that up here to 100. And then we can also look at the delay. And the delay you can see was at 80, but maybe I moved that up to 100 as well. And notice that I've got kind of a trail off on the top end for the delay. I don't need their S's and their super high sounds bouncing around in a delay. I'm not looking for that. I'm just looking for an extra tail to be added. The reverb, notice the this EQ on the reverb. This is pulled down some, but not too much because it does still add some air to the sound. But again, we want to kind of mask that that sound going around and bouncing around with high frequencies. Here's what it sounds like without EQ on the verb and without EQ on the delay. It doesn't sound bad, but if you see this delay, see when the drums are playing, all these low frequencies, we don't want those bouncing out in a delay. So put the EQ on. Reverb, similar.
For Jesus, there's nothing impossible.
So we're going to turn the EQ on.
When all I see are the ashes, you see the beauty.
So I think we're at a great place. We've got a good mix, but let's start to look now. The next step is refining our main mix out. So I'm going to come back up here and we're going to look at the main left and right bus. And we've got some, let's look at the channel strip actually. The channel strip, I've got an insert kind of ready to go in here as a first EQ and then, a first compressor. And it's the 1176 emulation, but we're gonna pause before we get to that. So just hold on. We've got some EQ, and then we have another compressor here, which is gonna be kind of a mastering compressor. So let's go ahead and look at this first inserted compressor. This is gonna be over here in effects rack 5 through 8, and it's effects 7. So this is the 1176 emulation. This is a great compressor. We've got it set to a super fast release and some basic attack here. And let's just see what this thing is doing for us. The goal here is to get this level to come up some and by a couple dB while controlling the sound.
Oh God, the battle belongs to
So when we insert it,
and if you are for me, who can be against me?
so you can see here that it's controlling now everything, including my voice, is going to get a little louder. So sorry about that.
For Jesus, there's nothing
Turn it off.
impossible for you. When all I see are the
Now, we like things getting louder, but you notice as we bring up that level, obviously our effects are going to get a little louder too. We just got to keep those things in mind as we're mixing going forward. Next thing we want to look at is EQ. Did a little bit of EQing because all of these things are going to start to add into the mix and boost levels. So now let's see what I did EQ-wise. Tried to add some shimmer back into this thing.
Did I? Oh God, the battle belongs to you. Every fear I lay at your feet. I'll sing through the night. Oh God, the battle, your love surrounds me.
So we've got this top end here. Now this is 6 dB is probably a little much on the top end at 10K, but it's something to play around with. And what we want to do is see what does it sound like through a test stream. Send this out to your live stream through your encoders, through YouTube, whatever you're using, and see what your overall sound like, and then adjust this EQ accordingly. So the next thing we're going to do is take a look at the compressor because that's the last part in this chain. And this is where we're looking for, say, a 40 millisecond attack, no hold, no release, really, really fast release, just a maybe a 4 to 1 ratio. And we are going to bring this up some in terms of the level again. What we want to see is this main left and right almost up in the into the -5 range. So this is going to get a little bit more volume. Let's just see what we get here.
You see the beauty. All I see is the cross. God, you see the empty tomb. So when I hide on my knees with my hands lifted high.
So we are starting to get into some really kind of level pushing here. Now, all of this stuff is all going through the main mix. And just to tell you what I've got in the end, if I'm going to take this, I'm going to get louder now. So I'm going to back off the microphone so to try and keep my level consistent. But we're going to take this and we're going to send this main mix. If we select our main mix, we hit sends. I am sending this into a matrix. So this whole time we've been listening and soloing the matrix 1 and 2. So if I go down here to our bus and matrix, if I select matrix 1, you can see it's soloed here. We have further capability now of doing some EQ. We could compress again. We could use this like a limiter. Kind of my normal thing to do is use the limiter that is built in, the precision limiter, which we can see here already set up to matrix 1 and 2. And this normally, I turn this down so that when I turn this on, it's not going to get even louder, but it would be normally a 3 to 5 dB bump as well, trying to get this to a nice controlled broadcast level. There was a recommendation about using the Edison, which is like I think a maximizer and widener. And we might do another video about that separately once we've got a controlled mix here. I just don't want to get too crazy with this video here right now. So I'm going to close this and let's see what we get. And then we'll turn on that limiter and just see what it's doing.
So when I hide on my knees with my hands lifted high, oh God, the battle belongs to you. Every fear I lay at your.
So you'll end up seeing the band hit just a little bit when the drums hit, the bass hits really big. You'll see it take out just a smidge.
Me. There's nothing to fear now, for I am safe with you. So when I fight on my knees. I lay at your feet, I'll sing through the night. Oh God, the battle belongs to you. And if you are for me, who can be against me?
All right, so one of the things that I'm noticing is the vocal is very present now, including my own, almost too much in the forefront. But we're hearing all of the low end frequencies really bumped up because of the 2 compressors and this limiter. This is pretty common, but you want to make sure your noise floor doesn't get out of hand. We're in the digital spectrum right now. If we had anything going digital to analog or anything close that could be adding some buzz or sounds, those are going to get amplified a bunch. You also may not need to use all of these tools. What I want to see right now and next is taking this and putting this, like I said, through a sample stream. But I think we're at a great place right now where we can say, we've done a great mix. We've done some EQ and some compression. There's more things to explore in the setup. We might choose to use the DCAs differently. We might choose to put a DCA. We've got this delay over here for the DCA, and that's going to mess with the level of the input bus going into the delay feature, the delay FX rack, as opposed to the one that's coming out of it. So anyway, this is a great work. We've done some good work here. I'm going to go ahead and jump out of these tools now and back to you on camera. All right, we're going to wrap it up there. Thanks for checking this out. I hope this video has been helpful and informative. If it has, go ahead and hit the thumbs up button. Maybe if you got a question or a comment, leave that down in the comment section below. I'm always in the comment section. But there's obviously plenty more we can do. We've got the ability to run buses, maybe for the drums or the vocals or the band, to really kind of refine and hone those different groups. Maybe we could add some DCAs or adjust the DCAs. I think we're kind of in a good spot from a DCA perspective right now. But the other thing we can do is panning. Panning is kind of the next step in the process. Obviously, some of the guitars were already panned either left or right, and if you saw the main output meters, the right seemed to be a little bit louder than the left did. And I think that's just based on the panning that we had so far. So we could spend some more time. The next video, what I want to do is adjust the panning. Then I want to explore that Edison plugin, that tool, instead of the limiter. See if we can use some compression on the matrix as a limiter, and then use the Edison as an additional tool. Maybe that allows us to cut back on the high-end EQ that we did on the main output and let the Edison add some of those upper overtones. But we'll dive into that next time. But for now, thanks so much. We'll catch you in that next video. Peace.